Aviation's been a huge part of my life. My dad was a pilot when I was a kid, and he used to take our family across country on some of these trips. Growing up, it was always stories of flying these little planes around the country. I didn't really realize until later on in my life how integrated aviation was going to be in my life.
Outline traffic, taxi from the refuge to the ramp, outline.
I love flying. It's one of the feelings that I get where I can zone everything else out. If I've got 1,000 things that I'm worried about or thinking about, one of the great things about aviation is you just turn your phone off. All of a sudden, instantly, everything's gone. The only thing that's left is you and the plane. Almost like cheating the laws of physics. And that's really what drove me with Nikola, trying to defy the laws of what was normal. People said it couldn't be done. Certainly there's things in my life that I wish I would have done better. And as you grow, those are lessons you learn.
929 and 119.925. Outline airport. Sky condition clear.
A Utah billionaire has been sentenced to 4 years in prison.
The jury found him guilty. Nikola shares tumbling in the after-hours.
The main statements about the capabilities of Nikola's early technology.
It is the new hot electric vehicle stock, Nikola, roaring higher. It is now up 96%.
Investors are betting big on EV right now.
Trevor Milton, founder and
Trevor
executive
Milton
chairman.
became a billionaire overnight when he took Nikola public back in June of 2020.
Trevor Milton is one of these breakthrough entrepreneurs, and these guys think big.
One of the tasks in life that we have as entrepreneurs is to be able to take risks that no one else thought was possible.
He built something that became a $30 billion company.
With Nikola, I warned you that the stock would spike right out of the gate and then plummet. That's what happened.
Nikola shares are tumbling after a short seller called the company, quote, an intricate fraud built on dozens of lies.
Hindenburg Research, they say the company has made false statements, it has rigged its truck reveals, and it's had misleading demonstrations.
Nikola towed a truck up a hill
and then just let it start rolling
because the truck couldn't run itself.
It was being rolled down a hill. It was in motion.
When the Hindenburg report came out, they had taken pieces of story, spun it to tell their tale.
The trucks worked. I mean, we had driving trucks at the time this came out. It was ridiculous.
Today, we announced charges against Trevor Milton.
It seemed almost as though there was a coordinated effort between Hindenburg dropping their report and the government issuing subpoenas to Nikola at their corporate offices. They were literally one day apart.
Trevor Milton steps down as executive chairman amid an investigation into the company. Nikola has fallen out 35%.
Wire fraud, securities lying to investors.
Can I blame the average American for thinking that Trevor is guilty? Absolutely not. Having been at Nikola from almost the beginning, I knew to the contrary.
The indictment claims that Trevor Milton used his massive social media platform to inflate his company's stock price.
It was difficult for a New York jury to relate to him, a wealthy guy from the West who buys tracts of land larger than the city that they live in. The government did kind of use that to their advantage.
You would think by reading the transcripts that nothing Nikola was doing was real at all.
There's 1,500 employees working on all sorts of various programs. If it was a scam, what were those people working on?
Trevor Milton, the founder and former CEO, will be spending the next 4 years in prison for fraud.
The company has cut all ties with Milton, but the damage is done.
It's heartbreaking, but I know that I'm not of value to my family if I'm a mess.
There's a lot of stuff out there about me that's just simply not true. The truth is important to me. That's why, for the first time, I'm telling my side of the story.
Trevor Milton, take one, Parker.
There we go. Do you want your egg over easy, or do you want it scrambled?
Over medium.
Okay.
How did you go, Smith?
Met on Instagram.
Trevor slid into my DMs. I think our back and forth banter was kind of playful. I was captivated. from the beginning. I'd never met anyone like him. One of the things that I was most attracted to was his spontaneity, optimism. He was just someone that was lighthearted and I could have adventure with. We ended up going to one of your employees' weddings, remember?
Yeah.
We were supposed to be going hiking.
Yeah, we were gonna go hike.
Forgot.
I forgot about this wedding.
He gets a call from his brother, Travis, and his brother says, "Where are you?" He's like, "You're supposed to be at Kevin's wedding."
We had to turn around and I was like, "Do you want to go to this wedding with me?"
And I said, "Absolutely not."
She's like, "No." But she did.
I did. I did end up going. And then we had this incredible moment. It was after the ceremony. There was like chaos going around, looking into each other's eyes, and I was like, this is gonna be it. I knew in that moment. I knew he was the one. And I knew it was gonna be wild. I knew it was gonna be a really big adventure, and it has been.
I was born in a small town in Utah called Layton, Utah. And my father worked for the Union Pacific Railroad. And so he relocated to Las Vegas. Back when I was there as a young kid, there was not a lot of people that lived there, so Vegas was still really small.
Growing up in Las Vegas was a good time. We had a lot of fun together there.
We lived in a somewhat rural neighborhood there. Lots of kids his age around there.
I've known Trevor since first day of kindergarten. I remember the first time I actually saw Trevor. He would kick his heels mid-stride. And I remember him walking into the class and I thought, that's strange, I've never seen anybody do that. And it turned out we were neighbors, and so we quickly became good friends.
We knew all of our neighbors. We were friends with everybody around us. We played a lot, rode dirt bikes, built forts.
Playing sports. We were pretty competitive against each other.
So there's 5 of us kids. My oldest sister is 10 years older than me, and my youngest sister is 10 years younger than me. Wide range of age group in our family.
Yeah, half the time we were fighting, half the time we were, best friends.
Trevor was unique. I wouldn't say a troublemaker, but he always had so much energy.
Trevor as a child was a pain in the ass. He was wild and wound tight.
He was always just a little bit different in the way that he thought and the way that he acted. And because of that, some other kids would tease him relentlessly. They didn't have a lot, and Trevor had to work for a lot of the things that he got. And I think that also contributed to some of his ambition and drive. He decided at an early age that he wanted to work really hard. To see the things that he's overcome personally is something that I don't think most people know about Trevor.
Come here. Ready? Sit. Stay. Ready? Go get it. Good boy. There you go. Good boy. There you go.
Being able to raise a dog together has been really special just because we haven't had the opportunity to have children yet. I've had 3 miscarriages, and so it just hasn't been in the cards for us.
He's our little boy.
Trevor's main influence when he was young was his mother. I worked a lot.
Just spent a lot of time with my mother as a child because my dad was working, and she was a real estate agent, and I had memories of putting up signs for homes for sale, and she started slowing down.
His mom was really a pretty dynamic person. She had been raised in foster care, and she is the rare exception of somebody that goes into foster care and is not destroyed by it.
I definitely saw the trauma, and my mom just refused to pass that trauma on to her children.
She was just a joyous, happy, let's go find some way to have fun. We called Trevor the Energizer Bunny, but really his mom was the Energizer Bunny until she got sick.
My mother had developed a severe version of cancer.
I remember as a young kid not knowing how to act in that situation. His family did the best they could to distract themselves. There was this gloominess to the situation that was heartbreaking.
When it became more obvious that it was becoming more of a problem, my wife really wanted to go to a small town.
That was when we decided to essentially start planning on leaving Las Vegas. And that was like the beginning of kind of the whirlwind after that. And so we moved to a small town called Kanab, Utah. My mother was one of the sweetest humans you've ever met on this earth.
Once it became clear that my wife was battling an extraordinary battle, it really took over our lives. She required just lots of supervision, and the kids would step in and help. And they all took their turn.
You know, helping her eat and cleaning up after her and helping her, like, go to the bathroom is a very hard thing to do with your mom. And we had a little sister who was, 5 at the time. She needed a lot of care and attention, and we really had to step up and be adults, and we weren't adults.
When your dad's working away from home and your mother is dying in front of you, it's just a really tough time as a child. You're just helpless.
The hardest day of my life was calling my kids on the phone and say, she passed. It was very, very hard to see your kids see that, know that, realize that their mom's gone. In general, Trevor took it the hardest of any of my kids. And I can still remember him standing in the mortuary with his finger on the coffin, just shaking like a leaf.
As a child, I remember thinking, like, why is it that it happens to her? That just doesn't make any sense. Like, why is it that to a good person this would happen when a lot of bad people are just rewarded with health?
Losing my mom, I did go off the rails. I partied a lot, trying to constantly avoid the pain. I should have been there for my family, and I wasn't. So I carry a lot of guilt that I didn't step up to the plate and help my father and my brother and my little sister and my family in that time. And I'm very grateful that, Trevor did actually step up and do a lot.
I was doing paper routes, I was doing mowing lawns, I was doing anything I could to make money. Our insurance company dropped us, and we had to sell everything we owned to pay for my mother's cancer treatment.
I would say that Trevor was always ambitious, but I think experiencing that as a 14-year-old really gave him a lot of perspective as to how unpredictable life can be and how to try and make the best out of a situation.
I don't know where I'd be today if she was alive, because it changed me. It changed me to become a fighter. I went through hell. I was not an academic. I didn't even graduate high school, but I went back and got my GED so I could go to college. And I moved up to northern Utah to go to a place called Utah Valley State College. I did miserable at college. I was not good. I was not a good student.
He has so much energy that the hardest thing in the world for him is to sit in a classroom for an hour or hours at a time.
I think one of the reasons why Trevor has been able to be somewhat successful is he's been able to channel that into something productive.
I decided to go sell alarms in Puerto Rico for a company and went door to door. I got to learn Spanish when I was there. That was a lot of fun. And then I came back and I decided I was going to go start my own company, a company called St. George Security and Alarms. That was a huge learning experience for me because I had to learn how to take on partners, take on investment, build, grow, and eventually sell. But we sold it for, that time when I was young, it was a sizable amount of money. And I put that toward my next venture. At the time, the internet was very, very young still. Amazon was only selling books, and eBay was doing pretty well. And I was like, there's got to be a blend of eBay and Amazon. And there just wasn't. And so we decided to build this company called UPillar. It was an online classified website that allowed you to sell anything you had. You could sell shoes, you could sell jewelry, you could sell cars, you could sell anything. We were growing like crazy. We had dealerships from all over the country advertising on our website, and it grew too fast. We couldn't afford to handle the servers. And so we ended up having to close down UPillar. I lost my house. I lost every asset I had. I lost it all.
Trevor, he just sees opposition differently than most people and sees failures differently. I think he just sees it as a stepping stone.
I was never blessed with the ability to win when I was a kid. I always lost. I remember seeing how hard my mom fought through her cancer. She fought to the very last second, even though she lost. And that was something she taught me, as you fight until the very last second.
Trevor had an uncanny desire to succeed. Where a lot of people just give up, he just found another way to get there.
After I lost everything in U-Pillar, I wanted to rebuild a company. I always thought as an entrepreneur that the best way you can fix something is by taking an industry that's not beautiful or sexy, and take that and turn it around, then all of a sudden you created something that no one else has created. And so I decided to get into the heavy-duty trucking world. It was kind of an ugly industry for a long time. It pollutes a lot, it creates an enormous amount of emissions and noise, and that's ultimately the market that I thought was gonna have the best growth over the next 20 years, and I was right. And so with no money and just an idea, I started a business called D-Hybrid. We would take these diesels and we would reprogram them to run off of natural gas and diesel at the same time. And it burned cleaner. And so natural gas had a lower ignition temperature, so it would ignite first and help clean the burn. And we were able to reduce the emissions substantially. D-Hybrid was able to sign a contract with Swift Transportation to outfit their trucks on the road. Ultimately, that company, D-Hybrid, failed. I lost everything I had again. But the company was great, the time in the market was fantastic. And so new investors came in and we built a company called D-Hybrid Systems, which was only surrounding the area of storage of natural gas, and that was it. And at this time, natural gas started taking off. Everyone was investing in natural gas. We ended up doing pretty well with that one. We ended up selling it to a company called Worthington Industries. I mean, I think I walked away with a couple $1 million. That was about it. But that was good. I mean, I'm not going to complain. At my age, that was wonderful. You can't be upset at walking away with a couple $1 million. Early childhood in Las Vegas. My dad was working at the Union Pacific Railroad. You know, as a kid, I spent a lot of time with him at the railroad yard. I was climbing all over the locomotives, having fun, and I got a ride in them a few times, and what I didn't know at the time was it was gonna alter the rest of my life. I'd always talk to the operators. I asked them about why these locomotives could pull so much weight. These guys would say, you know, there's so much power and torque in these electric motors. And that was like the light bulb for me that went on, you know, 30 plus years prior to me developing Nikola, which was the idea was a locomotive semi-truck. In 2014, we decided to set up a new company to build essentially an electric semi-truck. In 2014, electric vehicles were still considered kind of fringe. Not a lot of people believed in them.
What's the reception so far? You know, it's not the best time in the world to be debuting this with the economy, gas prices so low.
Tesla was starting to grow a little bit, but in the electric heavy-duty world, you were considered crazy to even consider it.
So the core mission initially was to transform the trucking world and develop a new type of truck that solved some of the problems the trucking industry was facing surrounding fueling, surrounding the experience of truckers and trucks, because they hadn't changed in such a long time.
He had this vision that he could do a hydrogen electric vehicle. It became apparent that he could have a no tailpipe emissions truck running down the road that didn't have the range anxiety that a battery electric truck would have. For every trucking company, if you got 10% of their business, it would be an extremely big difference he could make in the quality of the air in this country.
I left Worthington Industries, which bought the previous company, to start the new company. Worthington became a seed investor. That means they invested first before anybody. I put my money in, Worthington put their money in, and that's where we started.
Trevor didn't have an office at that time, but he did have a basement. You know, I think most every band starts in a garage. Well, startup companies start in basements.
The early days at Nikola when we first started were just filled with craziness and fun. It was like, okay, we're gonna build a semi-truck. There's never been a semi-truck like it ever built or developed. How in the world do we take this idea, this schematic, this drawing, and turn it to life? And so we started hiring people.
He called me and he said, hey, I've got something I'm working on. I think you might be interested.
It was new. It was a startup. I'd never worked in a startup environment before.
No one had titles. It was just engineers, and so everyone did everything.
So to be able to put your fingerprint on something and say, yes, I built this, I helped build this, that's what was intriguing.
I had a house on the east side of Salt Lake City, and in my basement, that's where all the engineers were. This is where it all began. This is where Nikola was started. This basement is where we had all of our engineers working. We had the road would just be lined with cars. You know, we had computers all over the basement.
It wasn't just his basement, it was also his kitchen and his living room and, you know,
loud noises and laughing and calling suppliers on the phone. Neighbors were suspicious for a while. We had a lot of cars and a lot of guys. I think we had one or two girls that worked for us at the time with probably a dozen or more guys. And so the neighbors definitely got suspicious, wondering what was going on. They called the cops on us. The cops showed up and they were like, hey, we got a call that there's 14 guys and 2 girls here every day. It was bad. So we invited the police in and they came down and they looked at everything and they were like, oh yeah, you're just running an engineering company. It's cool. And they left. It was a good thing I wasn't married because, you know, I don't think any wife wants 14 employees down in the basement working with wires and cables and computers.
When I would go over to his house, there were desks all over his basement. There were cameras up everywhere, and I was kind of like, what's going on here? Or like, this feels a little strange. And it was just very kind of secretive because it was a brilliant idea.
It's crazy. This was it right here. I haven't been here since we left. It's the first time. Moving from the basement of our house to here, it was quite the change. It was the first time we had any type of build out at all. All of our assembly was done here. We had high voltage battery areas. We had our powertrain area. We had our whole chassis of our Nikola 1 being designed and engineered and even assembled and built. Everything came in here, everything. It was just brings back a lot of memories when we first started.
It was honestly a really exciting time. Trevor, you know, his optimism is like, it's contagious. And so everybody's excited about this goal and this vision that he sees, and everybody's just working like crazy trying to get these things done. It was probably one of the funnest times in the company, honestly. It was chaotic, but it was always a good chaos.
What intrigued me about Nikola was the amount of work that they wanted to do in such a short time. And it had never been done before. Nobody had, at that point, had a fuel cell truck, and certainly not a Class 8 fuel cell truck.
A lot of the people that we worked with weren't from the automotive industry, and that was by design, because a lot of the people that were brought in, they knew not to say no. They wouldn't look at a problem and say, well, that can't be done. Instead, we would work around the problem and say, how can we do that? Nikola soon developed the culture of kind of a hold my beer situation where like, oh, you tell me that can't be done. Just wait, we'll make it happen. And that was very exciting and fun. And Trevor promoted that type of environment.
There's lots of challenges when it comes to developing products. There's the challenge of the technical, where you have to create something that wasn't created before. But there's also the challenge of the opportunity. To open doors, it takes a unique person, a unique skill. And I was always impressed with Trevor's ability to do that.
He really can help people catch a vision because he can explain how it'll work. And when they come up with, well, what about? Yeah, but what about? Well, his answer to that is, I'll figure that out and I'll tell you what it's going to be. Starts as a little seed and you put a little water on it and it starts to grow and he brings you back a tree.
I remember one of the first meetings I was a part of in Salt Lake. We were going over a lot of the costs associated with various components of the hydrogen fuel cell electric semi-truck. And the amount of hydrogen tanks that we projected to be required to reach the range that we wanted to obtain with the truck would have represented at such a large expense to produce the truck that it was no longer viable to move forward. And I remember the finance manager and everybody else being a little bit alarmed. And I remember thinking to myself, like, oh man, I just sold my house. I just moved here and this company is not viable. This is frustrating. The finance manager went and got Trevor out of another meeting, pulled him in. He's like, hey, we've got a problem. And Trevor He goes, hold on just a minute. And he pulled out his phone and he called up the manufacturer of the tanks. And he was able to negotiate the reduction of the price in the tanks by like 75% within like 5 minutes. He took something that most, I would say, businessmen or anybody familiar with that type of problem would have given up. And Trevor had it solved in a matter of minutes. And to say that that was confidence inspiring is an understatement. And that was the magic of working with Trevor, was you never knew what was going to happen, but you knew that if Trevor was involved, that it had a lot of potential to be something big.
Ladies and gentlemen, Trevor Milton, CEO, Nikola Motor Company.
The day that we launched that truck, the feelings and the emotion and the excitement in that room were, you could taste them, you could feel them. And it was because it was something that had never been done. I mean, people don't realize this. Right now, semi-trucks, electric ones, are out there all over now. And it was because of Nikola.
This is a really incredible time. One of my favorite quotes in the world. Just a couple of days ago, one of our users sent it off to us, and it just really shocked me. It was everything I've been trying to capture and explain to people for years and years, and that is the electric light did not come from continuous improvements of candles.
We had invited lots of truckers. We invited different suppliers. We invited different people from the States that were looking at moving different locations, just to, again, express and show what Nikola is intended to be and share that vision. And it was exciting. The night of the unveiling was exciting because we had the truck up on the stage. It was all covered up, and we were able to pull the sheet off, and it was neat to finally show off what we had been developing for so long.
Movers revolutionized our world. It's time we revolutionize theirs. For those who dare to reimagine.
No one thought that electric semi-trucks would ever work. And so you don't realize what you're fighting against. You're fighting against every other OEM in the world. You're fighting against your competitors. You're fighting against oil companies. You're fighting against people out there that just want to see you destroyed and then make money off of it. And so we had this huge group of people that wanted to see us fail. And so the excitement on the stage was even bigger because you're like, you know what? Screw you, man. Like, forget you guys. Like, that's what you get for second guessing us, you know?
Oh, that thing is so awesome. Oh, we've been waiting so long to show this to the world. You have no idea. It's just, it's hard to even contain my emotion about this. You imagine going up against the biggest companies in the world. It wasn't against a neighborhood company or even a big company. We go up against the biggest in the world, people, $40, $50 billion market caps. This is what we've been able to show the world we can do. You're gonna see that this is a real truck. This is not a pusher. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate it. Thank you. Come here, buddy.
Very happy to be sitting down now with the founder and CEO of Nikola. Guys, thank you both for being with us.
Taking Nikola public as a SPAC was wild. I mean, first of all, I didn't even know what a SPAC was. I had no clue.
Trevor, let's start with the transaction that has brought you to this desk this morning, which is, of course, SPAC.
SPAC structure. Nikola Motors will be doing a reverse merger with Vector IQ Acquisition Corp.
That is how they were able to go public quickly, is by merging with that blank check writing stock.
Vector IQ does the deal to acquire you guys, essentially, or merge with you.
We needed a method to get to the market, to get publicly traded quickly, and that's really what the SPAC was there for. It helped us get to market in less than 6 months, saved us a bunch of time. That was really our main goal, is how do we build as many trucks as we can? We'll be sold out for quite a few years, so we needed access to the markets as fast as we could.
As much as you would love to fight against this for a number of reasons, I think this story has legs.
You know, to look back, I actually think it was the right decision. I don't think there's anything wrong with going public via the SPAC. It was that we were the first big SPAC on the market that we got the target on us. I mean, we went from 3 billion to 30 billion in a matter of a few months. That was the beginning of like the chaos that ensued thereafter.
Nikola roaring higher. It is now up 96%.
104%.
113%. At one point last week, it had a market cap bigger than that of Ford Motor.
At the beginning of June, I warned you that this thing would spike after the deal closed. At the time, it was trading just under $34. Within a few days, Nikola's stock nearly tripled to an intraday high of $94.
Let's rewind for just a second in 2016 when we unveiled this truck and we told the world we were going to do a fuel cell. The fact that we are the first people in the world to develop ever and to deliver a fuel cell truck for people to see function was the reason why the valuation went crazy, because they were like, this could change the entire world. This is like the smartphone when they first came out with it. It wasn't pretty, but it worked.
So for the IPO, when we were doing all the financial videos with Yahoo Finance and things like that and talking about our company, we set up the cameras and I got to sit in and listen to him talk to the other side. And so it was really interesting to see his perspective and understanding that side of the business.
The generation that's investing now, they care more about the environmental impact of what you're doing than they do like, oh, well, you're 6 months or 8 months from revenue. They don't care. They're like, you know what? You're changing the world. You're going to reduce emissions more than anyone else. We're invested into you. After that happened, the whole world was like, holy crap, SPACs are going to become the biggest thing in the world. And it also created a bullseye for the government, because the government was like, we have to shut down every SPAC in the world because we can't have this kind of money flinging around. We want the standard way of going public to be the way you go public, and that should be how it is. Also, SPACs were just getting exciting. I mean, there's a couple before us, but now there's like a wave. You're out in the ocean, you have no idea if you're going to catch a big wave. We caught the monster wave, and we just never expected it.
The World Health Organization raising its global risk assessment for the coronavirus's spread and impact.
We are in the middle of what appears to be the 13th, maybe, trading halt of the session so far.
In order to provide stability to the financial system and to support the flow of credit in the economy.
The psychological impact is causing people to stay home, resulting in kind of a voluntary shutdown. They've got nothing to spend their paychecks on, so they either invest or pay down debt.
Investor, trader, whatever you want to call me.
The retail investor participate in the growth of this company.
See a lot of FOMO, see FOMO buying, see emotional buying.
Which just shows how manipulated this stock actually is.
So a retail investor is somebody like you or me. You don't have to use a stockbroker to buy stock. You can go on a lot of these new services like Robinhood. You can buy and sell stock yourself without paying a broker commission.
The contribution from retail investors into Nikola stock is really hard to determine. I actually didn't know that answer myself, and I asked my executive team, a guy named Ken Brady, I said, retail investors are important. And he was like, you're kind of an idiot, Trevor, they're not. He asked the banks and the NASDAQ to produce a report, and it showed how much was day traded by small investors and how much was traded by computers. And almost everything at Nikola was traded by computers, and only a small percentage, like really small, was actually done by retail. So a lot of the world thinks that like retail investors affect stock. They actually don't affect hardly anything at all. It's all done on these massive computer programs that trade millions of shares a day, and they do it within fractions of a second. If we could have raised money privately, we would have done that. In the private sector, they look long-term. They look 10 years out. Their idea is prove it to us first, then come to us. Whereas the public markets are like, hey, show us your vision and then let us help you get there. So we had to go public.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. Nikola forming a strategic partnership with General Motors this morning. Nikola Badger will be engineered and manufactured by GM.
The partnership with General Motors came about because of the Badger. The Badger was an electric pickup truck that was designed to be the leader, the first really in the electric pickup world that could actually do what a pickup truck wants to do.
We would not do this program unless we had an OEM partner. And GM was very interested in our concept because we had a really neat truck design.
4 or 5 different OEMs we analyzed who would be the best one for Nikola to build the Badger, and GM was very unique to us because they brought a lot more than just building the Badger. And so we wanted to tackle the market that was the Ford F-150, millions of trucks being sold every year, There was other people working in the electric pickup world, but they were small and they didn't have the ability to actually function as a real work truck. It's used for job sites. It has a 15 kilowatt power export, so you can power drills and saws in an entire, job site. It's got all the doors for a family. You can put car seats in it. You can put a four-wheeler in the back. And so we built this beautiful Badger at first on paper, and it was designing it around what we wanted. Then we took it to the next level. And the Badger became something where we decided to try to build it from the ground up using parts from suppliers, vendors, and also parts off other vehicles that we could use. It's a very common practice in the electric vehicle world. For instance, the first Tesla that was ever built was built on a Lotus chassis.
We met in depth with the engineers and both sides to say which of your technology do we use, which of our technology do we use. There was a very good marriage in specs for the vehicle and products that GM had to offer and stuff we had to offer to make this product a reality in a very short period of time.
It was delivered functioning in November of 2020.
Are you going to make money off of the Badger? And I asked that because you said, oh yeah.
Nikola stock surging. The company is going to be allowing pre-orders for the Badger pickup truck.
Let's talk about the semi-truck because that sounds like it's really going to be the bread and butter for your business. A $10 billion backlog, I understand.
About that $12 billion mark.
A 2,600 acre, $33 million mansion.
$25 billion valuation.
$28.8 billion.
Roller coaster ride for your stock, and it's a roller coaster only going up, it seems, so far.
Once the headlines started to appear that Trevor was the new billionaire, that's when people started to swoop in and there was a huge assault against him.
Jimmy, take one, AB, soft sticks, Mark.
So I remember the first time I heard about Nikola, I was hosting a client appreciation party. I rented out a movie theater. Afterwards, Trevor and there's a couple other guys sitting there and they were trying to figure out what to go do after the movie event. And he said to me, he said, hey man, I want to run something by you. He says, dude, look at this. He had a rendering of the truck. And I remember seeing it for the first time. I was like, oh my gosh, that's the future, bro. I think I asked, how do I get involved with this? And then he said, well, dude, if you want to invest, I can get you in. $500,000 I put in of the original $2.5 million that was raised.
Nikola became a company that was like stratosphere type of success overnight.
The idea or general concept of replacing fuel with hydrogen, which is like turning water into fuel, was such an enormous concept that even a glimmer of hope that they could pull it off would represent literally hundreds of billions of dollars in value.
I was up, I think, 15, 20 million in a day at one point.
We've got some buy zones here for you.
Part of the problem was it went so big, so fast, that it just got this giant spotlight on it.
I think it became a very big target for people to look at that and say there's a huge potential to benefit and gain from this company's stratosphere type of success. One of the targets that come after companies like that are short sellers.
Wilfred, Supermicro stock tumbling after short seller Hindenburg came out with a scathing report.
Roblox shares are taking a hit on a report from short seller Hindenburg.
Hindenburg, they took direct aim at Block co-founder Jack Dorsey.
When you hedge a stock, there's people who make bets that the stock is going to go much higher, and there are people that make bets that the stock is going to go much lower. A short stock person is somebody who's betting on it going down.
You have a bombshell today from short seller Hindenburg Research, which is revealing a new short position against Carl Icahn's IEP.
So one of the things that they did, and short sellers often do this, is a tremendous amount of research about the company. Nikola Corporation was a company that was pre-product, pre-sales. They recognized that this company had an enormous stock valuation. And so Hindenburg said, you know what, we're gonna bet against this guy.
Oftentimes when you work on a case, if there's one key misrepresentation by a corporate executive, that can be the foundation for a pretty strong case.
Moving on now to the founder of Nikola exaggerated the capabilities.
Investment firm accusing Milton of making false claims, showing a truck rolling down a hill to make it look like a working prototype.
Nikola out on a flatbed trailer and coasted down the hill.
Took it to the top of a hill and rolled it down.
Same truck that he was showing at the presentation
barreling through the hills of the Utah desert. The truck was rolling down the hill.
I thought it was hilarious. I really did. I mean, it's so brazen. I mean, what are you gonna do? You have to laugh. As far as like the actual kind of caper itself.
Oh, this was gonna be a promotional commercial for Philips internally.
It was used just as an internal
promotional video.
Specific to a component that was on the truck, marking 90 years of their company business.
And so they asked Nikola if they could film one of their vehicles.
Is that your rig? Yes.
So they came up with a script. They designed the script, we didn't.
Well, how much ethanol does it take? None, it's electric.
They came up with the planning of it, we didn't.
What kind of suspension do you have? Oh, leaf springs. Does yours? No, I have air ride.
They did all the video of it, we didn't.
Well, what parts do you use? Philips. Well, at least that hasn't changed.
And one of the things that they did is they said, well, geez, it would be really cool to have this truck moving. And Nikola's like, well, this truck doesn't move yet.
We were not willing to put that truck under its own power for the first time in a commercial. Just, it wasn't smart.
And they said, well, can we roll it down a hill? Sure, go ahead, knock yourself out.
The company later came out and said we should use some snippets of it on social media. So then the chief legal counsel, a guy named Britton Worthing, he came up with the verbiage, and the verbiage he came up with was in motion. One of the engineers brought up, hey, is this deceiving at all, or is this misleading? Because it says in motion, but it's not driving under its own power, and Britton said, it doesn't matter. Theoretically, it is in motion, and it's technically correct by the laws of physics, and we're safe to do it. So Britton approved it, and then he called an employee and told him to post it, and no one cared for years. 2 years later, we had our trucks out on the road while we're still private, operating in full fuel cell power, driving loads on the road. So it's been superseded by new information, and we're still private, so no one could ever invest on that. Fast forward to going public. The SPAC screened all these videos. They were fine with it, no issue. Investors screened it. No investor that ever invested said they were misled. Everybody knew. No big deal. Hindenburg comes, the short seller. He coins the phrase, Nikola rolling down the hill. And somehow in the media, between all the people he paid off to run with these stories, it caught fire.
Nikola towed a truck up a hill and then just let it start rolling.
And all of a sudden it became the biggest news in the world that Nikola rolled the truck down a hill.
It was being rolled down a hill.
You know, they essentially incentivized people to go out and do a thing called the Nikola roll, where they would go out and roll their vehicle down the same hill.
Doing the Nikola challenge today. 15 miles per hour, still in neutral as you can see.
In motion.
It became this like thing.
Man, this Nikola 1 is cruising back there.
The company produced videos of its trucks concealing the flaws.
In the situation with Nikola, there were just dozens of material lies. This was a very strong potential case.
After you see this truck come to life here tonight, you guys will understand that what we show you, we can actually deliver on.
Ed, what can you tell us about what happened here?
He said that it was not a pusher, which is industry parlance for basically meaning a prototype that cannot operate under its own power.
You're gonna see that this is a real truck. This is not a pusher.
That's exactly what it was. It was an inoperable prototype, that it had several components missing from it.
That was the problem with Trevor, is like he was always talking too much. When you're in the position you're in, taking billions of dollars of investment money, you can't tell these little white lies. You can't stretch the truth.
A pusher in the automotive world is a vehicle that never will nor can drive. That's the definition.
It's something that you build just to show a concept. It's not intended to operate. It doesn't have any of the intended actual functioning parts in it. It's a shell of a vehicle.
This truck could drive if we wanted it to. The power steering worked, the steering worked.
It had fuel tanks on it. It had gearboxes on it.
The air brakes worked, the batteries worked, the e-axles worked.
It had all the DC-DCs and the cooling system.
The turbine worked, the power distribution worked, and the low voltage and high voltage worked.
And it was designed not as a pusher truck, but as a prototype proof of concept that we could go and drive and test.
That's not a pusher.
It couldn't even power itself at the unveiling. There was a cable snaked up through the stage so its lights turned on.
The power cord that was running to the truck was used to power some of the lighting.
If you're going to turn on all your radios and all your electronic systems, unless you're going to turn on the actual engine that's providing electricity,
you can't run a vehicle in a show for hours on end with the engine not running.
They had artists stencil H2 and zero emission on the side of the truck, even though it had zero hydrogen components on board.
I think if you look at the way Tesla did the Cybertruck, it was the same thing. You create this cool machine, then you build a prototype. Now, it's not a working vehicle, it's a prototype.
Sure. Oh, man, it didn't go through.
And you say, this is a buildable device, and you get really excited about it.
We're going to make this, and it's going to look like that.
The Tesla Optimus humanoid robots at the Robotaxi event were teleoperated by Tesla staff. Musk did not state that there was teleoperation. The Tesla IR team did not say there was human assistance.
So again, you have Elon Musk selling a vision of the future, but not necessarily showing a ton of progress in the present.
This is a playbook that everybody uses.
At the end of a power cord, introducing the extended range electric volt.
The only exhaust emission out of the tailpipe is water vapor.
The Passat TDI clean diesel with up to 814 highway miles per tank.
And none of the chairmen of those companies have ever been indicted.
I think, when you're the CEO, it's your responsibility not to put out your most grandiose or biggest marketing piece ever, knowing that it was a lie. I think that falls on you regardless if you're the CEO.
The day before publication, I had read the report so many times, panic had started to set in. I remember wondering, what if everything is wrong? Very soon, I was going to end up pushing a publish button, and a whole lot of things were going to happen. We were picking a really big fight, and we knew it.
When the Hindenburg report first came out, it almost seemed laughable.
Immediately, I thought it was like some kind of a joke. I didn't even believe it. I think everybody thought that at first within the company.
Because it was so blatantly false. Everything about it was false. And there's email chains inside the company between all the executives and the attorneys and everyone, and they're like, this is a joke. This is absurd.
I would say a general consensus was that it was just a scam.
My initial reaction was to develop my own post or video and just blast out, this is all bullshit.
I couldn't believe how misleading some of the allegations were. They were so easy to disprove. I could have disproven the majority of them with pictures on my cell phone.
We've got truth on our side. We don't need to worry, Trevor. It's like we have nothing to worry about. Ignore them, which became impossible.
I didn't quite understand the severity of it. Because as I read through it, I was like, where are they getting this? None of it seemed accurate. And so I was like, okay, this is gonna blow over. It's gonna be okay. And it wasn't.
Nikola shares are tumbling after a short seller called the company, quote, an intricate fraud built on dozens of lies.
Short-selling research for Hindenburg.
Hindenburg Research. This is the report on Nikola. It's fairly hefty. It basically comes down to this. They say the company has made false statements, it has rigged its truck reveals, and it's had misleading demonstrations.
Nikola shares tumbling in the after-hours.
Shares took a huge hit after this report came out.
I think the stock fell 40%, 50%, whatever it was. I remember losing over $10 million that day.
We have reached out to Nikola, no comment at all.
It was shortly after the Hindenburg report. An email was sent saying the employees are not allowed to make any statements, share any information.
I was told not to say anything. I was told that I couldn't post anything. I couldn't defend everything that was false.
They were going to address everything.
Nikola has now made a statement. They want to be clear, this is not a research report. They say it is not accurate. This was a hit job for short sale profit driven by greed. We have nothing to hide, says Nikola.
I knew plenty of people on the marketing team, and I would regularly pull them aside and say, what's the deal? Like, hey, all you have to do is release a picture or two to validate ourselves, let alone Trevor, but ourselves. Like, this isn't hard. What's going on? Like, have you seen the news? Like, this is bad.
It appears there are now 2 agencies that are investigating Nikola
The ship is sinking.
Saying that the Department of Justice...
What are you guys doing about this?
The SEC is also...
Silence is an admission of guilt.
4 short sellers that are moving in on Nikola.
How is this beneficial to the company?
Nikola shares tumbling in the afternoon.
There's 1,500 employees working on all sorts of various programs. If it was a scam, what were those people working on?
We don't buy into this. We don't buy into the hype. You have a company that barely has any revenue here. We think it is ripe to fall at some point in the future. So that definitely is a factor as well.
I believe Hindenburg misrepresented the information that they had to tell a story that they wanted to tell a version that they wanted to tell, that the American public was being misled, but that was certainly not the intention.
The timeliness of the Hindenburg report was very interesting. Normally, you would see reports coming out from short sellers to their investor pool on a regular basis about the bets that they're placing and why. But this one was very, very interesting. It seemed almost as though there was a coordinated effort between them dropping their report and the government issuing subpoenas to Nikola at their corporate offices. They were literally one day apart. It's just bizarre that those things would happen at the same time and so close to one another.
At the time of this Hindenburg report, I believe there was a very real smear campaign targeted against my brother, and I believe it was for profit. It was to short the company and make a lot of money, and they got a bunch of people involved in it. And it was really sad to see, and sad that it took any roots at all because it was all based on lies.
Pressure today comes following a CNBC.com report involving 2 women who are accusing former Nikola chair Trevor Milton of sexual abuse. One incident dating back to 1999, the other one dating back to 2004. A representative for Trevor Milton denies the allegations, telling CNBC, Mr. Milton strongly denies these false allegations. At no point in his life has Mr. Milton ever engaged in any inappropriate physical contact with anyone.
For that to come out at the same time is not a coincidence. There is just no damn way. Somebody was trying to take him down and take him down hard.
During this short, there was 3 allegations. One was my cousin, and 2 was other people that I had run across in my past a long time ago. And one of them had sent me a message talking about how it was her Me Too moment and she was proud of it and and she never disclosed that to the prosecutors. And the other one, we found information and evidence where they were being represented by this person who was involved with the short sellers. They were being financially funded by them, their attorney legal bills were paid by them, and they were promised an immense amount of money in order to come out. And so when all this came out and they found out that there was financial incentives behind every one of these women, the case was dropped at that point. It's just the world we live in. You're guilty now until you're proven innocent. And as soon as someone makes an accusation, you're guilty. I was definitely in a vulnerable position at the time. There were a lot of opportunistic people that came out of the woodworks to try to extract as much as they could out of me at that time. Beyond the abuse allegations, there was also another angle, a guy named Peter Hicks that was tied to a piece of land I bought.
Peter Hicks was a wealthy real estate investor that Trevor Milton bought a Utah ranch, and it was a multi-million-dollar transaction. Part of the payment on the land deal included Nikola stock options. So after the Hindenburg statement came out, Hicks saw an opportunity to try and get more money from Trevor on this land deal.
Peter Hicks had already made a fortune off of the land deal. He made millions of dollars within just a matter of weeks. And after the Hindenburg report came out, Peter Hicks jumped on the bandwagon. It is very frustrating to see people twisting the narrative for their advantage.
After the Hindenburg report, it was my opinion that Hindenburg had really done an injustice because they persecuted a person that had, up till now, had just given everything to create this company, to create this idea. There were many people within the organization that felt the same way, that he was just personally attacked.
Trevor Milton, the founder of electric truck company Nikola, is voluntarily stepping down as executive chairman and giving up his board seat.
The stock has been on a wild ride over the past couple of months, just a little over a week after short seller Hindenburg Research released a report saying Nikola misled investors.
The hardest part was actually the home front at first, because we were getting death threats and it got a little bit scary. So we had to get private security. We had to, kind of just hunker down and be silent is what we were advised. They didn't stop. It went on for months and months. This was after the company decided to turn on us. As we agreed to exit a certain way, they were behind us. They were our friends. We were going to family events, and we could tell that it was advised. It wasn't one at a time or at different times. It was all at once. No one could speak to us. It was really devastating.
The people at Nikola that were in the leadership were concerned that, hey, we're targeted now and we don't want to be ourselves accused of anything improper. And so they tried to find a way to protect themselves. Even if the statements were false, they just didn't want the appearance of being blamed for anything. And so they hid behind Trevor, which was the face of the company, to say, we need you to say this, and we need you to do this, and we need to do that. And then when Trevor said, I'm going to step aside, they used that to their leverage and their advantage to say, well, now we can just blame him, and we can be in the clear.
I don't know if you could ever create a better perfect storm than what Hindenburg did. I had already told the board that I was planning on stepping down in December, so we went public in June. I planned on staying on for only less than 6 months and then stepping away, retiring, and focusing on, trying to help my wife get healthy.
In 2018, we had bought a home, but we were doing a bit of renovation, so it wasn't ready when we moved down to Phoenix and we got an Airbnb. What I didn't realize about the Airbnb is that it had really high amounts of mold in it. So I recall opening the washer and just black mold all over. And after that, my health just started to deteriorate a little bit. So I went to a clinic to try to just cue in to see what was happening and get some blood work done. I was there for only 5 days, and on the 5th day, when they put the PRP in me, something was different.
A doctor had put the wrong person's blood plasma that had all kinds of sicknesses in it and injected it into my wife thinking it was hers. It almost killed her instantly on the spot.
When they injected it was a pretty substantial reaction. Pulsating down my leg, I was more dizzy than usual, and I could tell that something wasn't right. Trevor got me back home, and then I went down into 2 seizures, stopped breathing. Trevor called an ambulance, and they came to get me, rushed me back to the same emergency room where they did a ridiculous amount of testing and told me nothing was wrong. I was very, very sick. So we went on this journey to try to find what was wrong.
It destroyed her body. It destroyed her health. It destroyed her ability to have children. It gave her diabetes instantly, autoimmune diseases instantly, and her body started attacking itself thinking someone else's blood was in there. Now it doesn't know what is what.
In one day, she went from being a healthy young woman with the aspect of maybe having kids and a family, wanting kids and a family, to a type 1 diabetic. For at least the first 2 years, I just kept hoping and praying that she wouldn't die today.
I couldn't drive, I couldn't cook, I couldn't walk up and down the stairs. It was a really hard time for Trevor and I, because he had the pressure of taking care of all these employees and their families, yet his wife was dying at home. Like, we had no idea what was going on.
During this time of going public, the insanity was crazy, and I was working long hours, and my wife was at home barely getting out of bed. I could not help my wife grow the company, deal with all the SEC stuff, deal with Hindenburg. I had to choose one or the other. I had to choose my family or the company. I chose my wife. My life right now is revolved around trying to take some of that stress off of her and like support her in the ways I can, because a lot of her therapy is stuff she has to do on her own.
So I have to check my blood sugar regularly. I wear a continuous glucose monitor for diabetes. And so I have an app on my phone that sends like me alerts if it gets too high or too low. Depending on the number that it reads on here, then I will put insulin in. And I do that before I eat too. And I used to be really scared of needles, and I'm not anymore because it's part of my everyday life. I also developed something called POTS syndrome. It's a condition where when you change elevations, when you're going from standing to sitting or sitting to standing where the blood pressure needs to change, it doesn't happen quick enough for you. So basically, it doesn't make it to your brain enough and you get these dizzy spells. I used to have them really bad where I needed assistance walking. I couldn't drive. I mean, it made it almost impossible to move around the house by myself, which was a tough time of life. It's definitely sent me on an interesting journey of health, and it's kind of had to be a part-time job of finding solutions so I can live a life that feels meaningful.
It was a really tough situation because I stepped away because my wife was dying. The way the media read it was, Trevor's guilty, he stepped down because of Hindenburg. And then all of a sudden, thousands of articles went out, and it was uncontrollable, and then all of a sudden there's no way to fix that narrative.
But today, Nikola's executive chairman and founder stepped down because of some high-stakes boardroom drama.
This Hindenburg research report was something that totally smashed the stock.
He was worth $1 billion. I don't know if he's below that at this point. I might get the hell out of there too.
I wonder whether his leaving has something to do with GM being unhappy about the situation, and the fact that Gursky, who helped put that deal together, is now running the company.
When I left the company, it was at $30 a share. It was worth $10+ billion, and they had $1 billion in cash in their books. Under the direction of Steve Gursky, he's destroyed the entire company. You know, the entire deal with GM fell apart as I was no longer there. The new leadership didn't want anything to do with the Badger. Essentially, GM says, we're out too then. And so they both just bailed on it. And then it caused the stock to fall even further, and then it made me look even more guilty. So the whole thing was a cascading effect of things that the company did, and everything they did made it look like he was guilty.
Yeah, he says he stepped down because of his wife's health. I mean, what do you think? It's the day after the report came out that it was all fraud. I think it's pretty clear why he stepped down.
When Trevor stepped down after the Hindenburg report was released, the optics did look bad. To me, it really demonstrates a lot about Trevor's character when you know what else was going on. The amount of stress that would cause, Trevor had to prioritize something. Do you prioritize money, or do you prioritize family? And Trevor prioritized family, to devastating consequences to his character or his reputation. Yeah, but did he do the right thing? Absolutely. So do I wish he could have stayed on? Yeah, absolutely. I often wonder where Nikola could have been if Trevor were still there, because so many amazing things were about to happen.
Good morning. My name is Audrey Strauss. I am a United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Today, we announce charges against Trevor Milton, former CEO and Executive Chair of Nikola Corporation. We charge that Milton engaged in a scheme to enrich himself by making false and misleading statements to retail investors about the development of products and technology at Nikola Corporation. Today's criminal charges against Milton are where the rubber meets the road. Now Milton will have to answer in a court of law for his allegedly false and misleading statements.
I was in Wyoming. I got a call from my attorney. And he said, Trevor, you're going to be indicted. And I said, for what? I don't understand. Why would I be indicted? And he says, they're going to indict you. They're going to arrest you. They're going to indict you. And I was like, holy cow, this is crazy. And I was like, and first thought in my head was this, how's Chelsea going to handle this? Her health. Like, that was the first thing I thought about. I felt like I'm a strong enough person. I can handle just about anything put at me, but you don't want to see your family go through that kind of torture and pain. And so it was tough. I just so many emotions because I didn't understand, like, why are they indicting me? And he says, because of your speech. Yeah, it was how I used my verb tense in conversation. So it was that was what they took issue with. It wasn't that there was any money missing. There was no dollars taken, stolen, misappropriated. No funds missing, no documents destroyed, no documents incorrectly submitted to the government, nothing. I mean, the stuff you would think about fraud, that's what fraud is, right? So that was really, it just didn't make any sense to me. I was like, wait, this isn't real. I thought it had to be like a bad dream or it just wasn't real, but it was real. So I had to drive home and I remember hugging my wife and I just said, listen, I need to tell you some things gonna be really hard for you to hear. And I told her and she just fell in my arms, just started bawling. I saw my wife break down, and from that moment on, I saw her health go to complete hell. And it was the hardest few years of my entire life.
Well, when I heard that Trevor was going to be indicted, I just couldn't imagine that they could even find the substance for an indictment. It was almost paralyzing, just sucks the life right out of you to think about that. Being indicted by the DOJ just about ensures you of either being convicted or of maybe wishing you'd been convicted and given up early and just gone to jail. It gets that oppressive.
During this time, we both have had incredible amounts of stress. I was on death's door, and he had moments where he said, am I the one causing this? I mean, it was heartbreaking. But then he's going through the biggest trial of his life, which ultimately we're going through it together. And we both are looking at each other with such empathy, wishing that we could change each other's situations.
I was indicted in front of the world. Wire fraud, security fraud, all this stuff, allegations of these girls at the same time. I mean, just everything came at me at once to destroy me. And it was amazing to see her just stand by me and just say, this is BS, I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter, like, I'm here and I'm gonna be with you every second of every day and support you. And I'm so grateful.
She has not ever failed to support Trevor through this adversity. It's been remarkable. It is difficult for me to express what that's meant.
So she's had, I think, a tremendous impact on Trevor's life in general, but especially with all these trials, keeping him focused and not let all this that's going on get to you. She has a calming effect on him, and it's been wonderful. She's probably been one of his greatest strengths in this, I believe.
I know that I want to be with this man. He's the love of my life. He's my best friend. He balances me. And so if we had to start over on a beach with a taco truck, and I've said that even when we were dating, like, I'm here for it. Let's do it.
How did the trial end up in New York? Well, to be honest with you, the real easy answer is because they could never convict me in another district in America.
In the Southern District of New York, the conviction rate is nearly 100%. It's safe to say is not a place that you want to be as a criminal defendant.
Take one, marker. I'm Clifton Newman. I have 24 years experience as a trial judge. Numerous high-profile cases, most recently the State versus Alex Murdaugh, a double murder trial. Cross-examination. I think most federal courts have a higher conviction rate. They are more selective in their decision to prosecute. The Southern District of New York probably have all the resources that they need to pursue a case successfully.
One of the arguments made in the pre-trial phase was that venue was inappropriate in New York because none of the conduct actually occurred in New York.
They said that a wire went through New York for a piece of land that I bought that had securities tied to it. Come to find out later, the wire actually never went through New York. I'm guaranteed by the Constitution the right to be tried by my peers, not someone 3,000 miles away. Remember, this is what happened to the Founding Fathers of America. They used to drag the Founding Fathers of America across the ocean to where the people hated them and convict them and try them and kill them inside the court there. We filed a motion for venue, just telling the judge it was wrong. The judge heard it, and he just said it's gonna stay here.
The courthouse at the Southern District of New York is one of the oldest courthouses in the country. It's where the biggest cases have been tried. For an attorney, you look at that courthouse as being like, oh, like this is the big show.
Going into the Southern District was really, really interesting. You know, you immediately walk in there, it's a very, very dark room. A lot of dark woods, almost no light.
The setup was a little strange because we were just coming out of COVID. There was plexiglass around the witness box, plexiglass around the lectern where the attorney spoke.
I was there at Trevor's trial for the whole thing. I was there every single day, front row, watching the trial, and it was, I would say, a very difficult experience.
They said you don't care about the environment. I just thought I'd give you an opportunity to say it's true before you get the cross.
It was horrible.
I don't think I could have prepared for something like that. I get high blood sugar when I'm stressed, like cortisol. The whole time I'm just like shoving an insulin pen in my leg, trying to be discreet on the front row.
I was present for 3 weeks of it. I had an idea about the legal system and how our country works. It was quite an awakening, not at all what I expected.
My friends and family being in that courtroom were everything to me in my life. And I bet we had 20 to 30 people at my trial from my friends and family every day of the trial.
He had a lot of support there, and I think that just trying to get through the craziness of every day, he needed that, and as a family, we were happy to do that.
Most of them were traveling 3,000 miles away. They were giving up everything in their life for 2 months. No one should ever be subjected to that, ever.
As difficult as it was, we were also talking with Trevor every day, and you know what? His optimism's always there. Because he's like, you know what, I'm in the right, I'm gonna win this. I did no wrong.
Service on jury duty is the highest form of public service next to service of our country in a time of war. It is a very high calling for one to serve honorably on a jury.
The jury in my trial was tough. There was a couple people in my jury that I thought were really good people that would stand up for the truth. The rest of them I had doubts about.
People who knew Nikola as a business in their community in Utah, those jurors probably would have had a very, very different impression of the facts in this case. He had none of that.
They dragged me to a city where people would never be able to understand me, who would hate who I stood for. It would be a class warfare, and they knew it had nothing to do with the trial, but they could convict me because they could guarantee a jury that would convict me.
Nobody was a look-alike person to Trevor. It's hard to believe that any of these people had even traded a stock before or, even knew how the SEC operates.
Most everyone there would either work for the government, who is involved in the government. They hate wealthy people. Where I come from, what I stand for, what my family is like. It was a very, very anti-wealthy mentality in that courtroom from day one.
Some of them were asleep half the time, and they wouldn't look at Trevor. I think there was one girl looked at Trevor and looked at our family. I think that I could have walked out on the street and none of the jury would have recognized me except maybe that one girl.
I'd say probably 90% of the evidence that showed I was innocent was prevented from coming into trial. The company claimed privilege in all these communications. I never got to show the jury it. Thousands of documents that show I was innocent.
It appears when you read the transcripts, it was very, very difficult for that evidence to get let in.
The prosecutors in our defense would go meet with the judge, and they would come back and they would say, yeah, none of this comes in.
It was oppressive to listen to the manipulation that goes on and what they do and don't allow the jury to hear.
People were coached into wording things so things couldn't be presented into evidence.
Like, we could not talk about the trucks that were out on the road and being test driven. That was very difficult.
The day after Hindenburg hit, our CFO had a call with the biggest investors we had at our company. And in my CFO's diary, he wrote, "Trevor's not fraudulent." The judge did not allow that in a trial. I have witnesses that have come forward to me to tell me that they told the government in statements that I was innocent, and the government never turned them over to me. I know of dozens of them.
But none of that information was made available to the defense to be submitted to the court. Only the information that was voluntarily provided to the defense could be presented in court. You know, if there's cooperation between the company and the prosecution, they're not going to release anything to the defense that could be presented in court that would damage their case.
When I met with the DOJ, they went through my testimony and they determined that nothing in my testimony was supportive of their claims against Trevor. And even though I had all the information surrounding what we had and hadn't done in Nikola and how that related to the accusations against Trevor, I believe that they did not want me to testify because it would have exonerated Trevor from any of the allegations they had against him.
I can remember sitting there in the trial watching a slide that the DOJ put up of a particular interview he had. And at the top of the interview, it said, "Mr. Milton, what is your plan for Nikola going forward?" And then the DOJ in the trial, they highlight the thing that they thought was a misspeak, but nobody called any attention to the fact that the guy already said, "What's your plan?" And Trevor was speaking about his plan going forward. And then they said, well, that wasn't true at the time. Well, no, it wasn't true at the time. That was his vision of the future. Plain as day, right up at the top. If they'd have just looked at that and allowed it in, it would have made a big difference. But the jury didn't get to hear that. It was not allowed.
Founder of Nikola Motors facing years in prison, defrauding investors for his $3.3 billion company with technology that didn't exist.
He even claimed that Nikola was developing the technology for a new pickup truck, which he called the Badger. But in fact, the Badger was nothing more than another company's truck that was dressed up with Nikola branding.
That was categorically false and a lie by her, and it destroyed our stock. And it's provable that it was a lie because a guy named Dave Sparks who bought those assets later, and it was driving when he bought it.
Boy, have I got a story for you guys. The Nikola Badger. These trucks actually exist. They're real. It runs, it drives, a full interior. It is really cool. But it's been sitting in storage for over 3 years. Nikola decided to cancel these programs, focusing on the big rig stuff. All I wanted to do was post it. They say, hey guys, look, it's real. This isn't a fraud. But I couldn't because when you're dealing with companies this big, there's a lot of pieces of paper that you sign that basically just say, shut up and don't tell anybody about what's going on.
It was really frustrating not to be able to show all the hard work we put into and unveil that this was a real truck. 99% of that chassis was hand-built custom parts. And the cab was custom as well. All the interior, custom dash, custom seats, custom steering wheel. So to say it was just a badge Raptor is a complete false statement.
Something is not adding up here. So Tom, help us understand something.
The press is always gonna frame things the way they want. And so I had to kind of put press and media aside.
The way that the prosecution was trying to make him out to be a total devil. I was stunned at the way that they twisted what took place.
If you knew anything about the actual issue, then it just is not a clear picture at all.
Right before our closing arguments, one of our attorneys got COVID. They decided to shut the courtroom down for a whole week.
You had a jury who heard a case for over a month. Then the jury had a 1-week vacation.
They just forgot about everything. They went back to work, they went back to their lives.
And then come back and try to remember everything you've heard. It's kind of difficult.
Some of them probably researched me. There's a lot of content out there about me that was not true.
I don't know what impact the delay might have had, but I have never experienced a jury taking a 1-week break. between trial and argument and deliberations.
And then they got called back in for the final closing arguments and jury instructions, and 36 pages of instructions.
So the jury charges in the Alex Murdaugh trial involving double murder charges were 15 to 20 pages, and the Trevor Milton case was 36 pages.
I can tell you if you give the jury too much, they won't look at it, and that's what happened. They had already put it out of their mind. They got called back in, they got the instructions, and they were like, we're just done with this, we just want to go home.
After a month-long trial, we would expect the deliberations to cover several days. In this case, the jury had a verdict within a few hours. We immediately knew that that was a bad thing.
When the verdict was read by the jury, it was single-handedly the hardest moment of my entire life. Because I knew inside, I said, this jury just convicted an innocent person that spent his life serving and giving to everybody. And they destroyed me.
It broke me. I sobbed, I fell.
She just collapsed, and just started bawling. I think most people were in shock. There was just tears, but Chelsea just collapsed.
My wife called me and told me that they found him guilty, and it was just like, you gotta be kidding me.
I remember that night going home and there was no comfort. There was nothing that could bring us comfort. Just him and I in the room and just no words.
I think back and I still can't believe that they would say guilty. It hit me very hard. All of a sudden I felt like I had a weight on my shoulders that I hadn't had previously, and I was very worried at that point.
I was just in utter shock that anybody could possibly find him guilty of some crime that didn't exist. They proposed that he misspoke, and that's a lie, and therefore that's a crime. I mean, you go to McDonald's and you look at their sign and you got this great big burger and the meat's falling off the edge. Well, what about their misspeaking? Don't see McDonald's going to jail.
The problem is when you say that you have something and you tell people they should invest their money in it, and it's not accurate, it's not what you say it is, and then those people lose that money. I mean, who's responsible? Somebody has to be responsible for that. And so, I don't know. I know puffery is a real thing. Elon Musk has said millions of times some different things were gonna happen and didn't. I don't know if he should have gone to prison for it. I did think there needed to be some kind of accountability. I don't think somebody should be able to build a company and get wealthy off of lies and then be able to walk away with that. So, I don't know.
Am I guilty of puffing or exaggerations or misrepresentations? No. I had to try to explain to the world that we were gonna change everything about the diesel engine, that the emissions were gonna go away, that hydrogen was a viable product. And by explaining all that, I would speak about the business plan all the time because we went public as a pre-revenue company. Everyone knew we were pre-revenue. All the documents that Jimmy and other people signed clearly understood that what we were talking about was in the future. He signed his name on every one of them. He understood they were not in production yet. He understood everything he was getting into, he understood. By the way, I heard he made about $5 million. That's essentially what you see around me is people making money off of me and then turning around to destroy me. After my trial was over, there was multiple employees that had approached me and essentially asked me for forgiveness for what they've done. And they were looking for a way to sleep at night. One of those people that came to me was the former CEO of Nikola, Mark Russell. Mark was one of the people I loved most in this life. And he came over to my office and we were able to have a conversation about what was wrong. And in Arizona, it's a single party consent state. The facility has cameras and audio, and you're able to hear part of that today. You knew I was never talking about the present moment. You knew I was talking about the business plan. I told him that. No, you didn't. Yeah, I did. No, you did not. I can read you your transcript right back. You never once told him it was a business plan.
What could we have said that would have changed their case?
You could have looked at the jury and said, Trevor's not fraudulent. Nothing he did was fraudulent. All it takes is one good man to stand by and I don't do nothing.
Well, that's what I'm here to talk about.
Did you believe I was fraudulent?
I don't believe you intended to defraud people. No.
You knew I wasn't fraudulent, Mark.
I don't believe you committed fraud. I believe you were wrongly convicted.
And I think a lot of it came down to the fact of how he felt. He was hoping to right a wrong, to fix what had happened, and to possibly make a play to right the ship. And hear the truth. The truth is that I didn't do anything fraudulent.
At Trevor's sentencing hearing, in order to keep him out of prison pending the appeal, his attorneys made certain arguments. The judge did acknowledge that there were potential issues.
Prosecutors were making a comparison that Nikola was just a big bed of lies, just like Theranos.
Hailed the next Steve Jobs, Elizabeth Holmes promised to revolutionize healthcare.
She called it the iPod of healthcare and claimed it could run hundreds of lab tests with just a single drop of blood. But an explosive investigation revealed it was the scam of the century.
And we told the judge, we said, Your Honor, the trucks are real. Theranos, everything was fake. And the judge is like, are you telling me that the trucks are actually real? Yes, Your Honor. Both of them, the hydrogen and the battery, both of them are available for sale today to customers. My defense attorneys look over just to verify. They say, Trevor, is that true? I'm like, yes. And at this point, I actually started saying it myself because I was like, I'm not waiting for my defense attorneys to tell the judge what's up. So I was like, yes, Your Honor, they are real, both of them. And he's like, you can let your attorney speak for you. And I was like, I wanted it. I was so bottled up and so angry that they were able to suppress the truth through this whole thing, and how corrupt the system is, that the system didn't even know that the trucks were real when they convicted me, how bullshit that is. And he looks over the prosecutors and he says, are those trucks available today to buy? And the prosecutor said this will blow your mind. Well, Your Honor, they have seatbelt recalls. And it was the first time I saw the light bulb click with the judge. Holy shit, this guy just got railroaded. And the judge, give him credit, he says lots of vehicles have seatbelt recalls. It was the first time I saw the judge stick up for me. He was visibly shaken at this moment, and he walked out of the courtroom. And everyone's like, what in the heck just happened?
He had to take a break and go back in the back, and he said, I'll be back in 5 or 10 minutes, and he jumped out and left and came back. And I don't know whether he went back to look to see if it was running or if he just had to get his composure.
I think it affected him tremendously. I think he was under the assumption there was never such a truck on the road this whole time, and now he's feeling the weight of this.
The judge says, Trevor, I don't think you intended to mislead anybody or harm anybody. There's a huge spectrum of good and evil in this world, and I've seen evil people walk through this courtroom, and I don't think you're one of them. There's 3 counts. You could be sentenced on each one of them. Instead of that, I'm gonna have them all run at the exact same time. I'm gonna give you 48 months, and that's it. And the prosecutors just dropped their head in their hands. And then the prosecutors asked the judge to put me in prison. And it was clear that the judge was visibly concerned at that point. He says, I've been sitting here watching Mr. Milton's family come to this every day of this trial and here in the sentencing, and I've seen nothing but an incredible family supporting him, and that there were real mistakes that have taken place and that will be very real on appeal. I can't see why he should have to report right now. This is his words. He says, I think this is just a bump in the road for you, Trevor. And it was the only time I ever saw the judge see me as a human, as actually a person. And the prosecutors didn't say a word, didn't hold a press conference. It was essentially a total disaster for the prosecutors.
The judge remarked upon how much family support he had, and he seemed genuinely grateful and somewhat astonished. And I think he just felt like he'd let the appeals court decide it for him, because I think he realized that he got stonewalled by the prosecutors.
Hearing the judge say right after the sentencing, he said, I understand you're going to appeal this case, and that is warranted. And to me, that's very telling for a judge of that level to say, you should appeal this.
The judge did grant Trevor's motion for bail pending appeal. The bail package, I believe, was somewhere around $100 million that was secured with properties. And ultimately, the judge let him go home to look after his wife.
I almost felt greatly appreciative of the judge, especially because initially the prosecution asked for 64 years, which is just astonishing.
Trevor Milton, when he went to trial and he was convicted, there was a certain amount of evidence that warranted the jury to believe that he'd committed wire fraud. Now, new evidence has come to light that the person who testified against him in criminal court may have perjured himself.
Count 4 indictment against Trevor Milton involved the alleged securities fraud violation in purchasing of the land and ranch in Utah from Peter Hicks.
When we were buying this piece of land, the agent set up a phone call with myself and Peter and his son Lucas. The party was in Massachusetts at the time. Massachusetts requires dual party consent to record a phone call. Peter illegally recorded this phone call with his son.
Now, Trevor, this is the plan. I mean, you're not gobbling it up right now because that would be getting too far ahead of yourself, or are you?
No, we are on a certain route. So from LA to Phoenix, we're already doing that. That's where ABM Bev is, with Anheuser-Busch.
Peter Hicks alleged that he relied upon fraudulent misrepresentations by Trevor Milton in consummating the sale.
Interestingly enough, Peter Hicks testified against him in the criminal case, turned around and sued him in civil court. In the civil case, the Milton attorneys did a really good job of convincing the judge in the civil case to do what's called a forensic audit. What they found is 20,000 documents.
Peter Hicks and Lucas Hicks had deleted up to or lost or destroyed up to 20,000 different documents. He deleted half of it and only gave half of it to the government.
A lot of information that may have exonerated Trevor Milton in the criminal trial.
Peter Hicks claimed to have been the victim. The real victim appears to have been Trevor Milton. This conviction on count 4 is troubling. If I was the presiding judge and this new evidence landed in my lap, I would automatically grant a new trial.
The world will know that the government had a witness that lied, destroyed evidence, perjured himself, and that's who they used to convict an innocent person. So now you fast forward, and this is where everything gets completely put into the tornado.
There were reports that juror number 6 had made comments on social media that it was her New Year's resolution to abolish the billionaire class.
This is someone who hates wealthy people, desired to take down a rich person. Almost all of her tweets are anti-rich. She lies to the judge about it.
It's my understanding during the jury selection process that she had told the judge and the attorneys that she was not an active social media user. It's been determined that that was not factual. She uses social media quite frequently.
And she's the juror who's controlling the jury and convicting me.
Quite often, there's a single strong-willed person that will dominate the jury. One person can influence the outcome. If I was the judge in a case in which the juror demonstrated absolute bias against the defendant on trial, that juror would be taken off the jury.
And it just makes me sick to my stomach to think that that's the kind of person that was on my jury the entire time. The judge gave the jury the ability to go talk to media. They said, why did you convict him on 1, 3, and 4, but acquit him on 2? 1/3 of the jury was there for the interview, and they all agreed. They said, well, because count 2 required intent.
So there were 2 securities fraud counts. He was guilty on count 1, not guilty on count 2. And this is really weird and really confusing because these 2 securities fraud counts, they require really similar things. And so it was hard to understand the jury's thought process, like how they could arrive at this conclusion.
The front page of my jury instructions said count 1, 2, 3, 4.
2 of those counts were for securities fraud. The other 2 counts were for wire fraud.
The single most important element of all of those is what they call intent.
In order to be found guilty of any criminal offense, criminal intent is necessary.
In criminal cases, we don't convict people based on negligent acts. If criminal intent doesn't exist, there's no crime.
Criminal intent is required on all 4 counts to convict. Unfortunately, the jury only thought criminal intent was required on count 2, which is why they acquitted me on count 2.
It was count 2 where we just had an issue. I'm assuming an intent was that element missing from? Yeah, intent to harm. Intent to harm, okay.
So you acquitted him on count 2 because count 2 requires intent? Yes, that's correct. But count 1, 3, and 4 did not? Nope, no intent was required on 1, 3, and 4, so we found him guilty on those.
So criminal intent was missing in the 4-week trial? Yeah.
The jury says, yes, we found no intent in the entire trial. What in the heck did I just hear?
When the jury gets it wrong,
A growing trend of activist jurors is fueling new reasons for appeal.
The jurors came out and said, one of the jurors had to be home by 5 o'clock. And if we didn't convict him, then there might be an alternate brought in and he could be acquitted on all counts.
You just kind of want to describe what those first moments are like, that first hour in that room together.
Well, we just wanted to get through it, mostly because I knew I couldn't go back. Like I said, I paid for school. I'm in school, I paid for it out of pocket, and my job wasn't gonna pay me after 15 days. And I was already losing money being in jury duty.
Right.
This is who was on my jury. And we're like, this is insane. Like, this can't be real.
I feel bad because I couldn't come back that Monday, so maybe I should just step down, just let them keep deliberating. Yeah, because maybe if they had just kept on talking about it, things would have just... There's also the fact that, we weren't presented with all the evidence.
It certainly looked from the outside, which is confirmed from the reporting, that it was a rushed verdict because the jurors just simply wanted to be done.
We filed massive motions to throw this entire trial out, and they were denied. It blows my mind that this is America.
So there we have it. Evidence that a jury in New York just put a man away for 4 years while openly admitting that he's innocent. But at least juror number 6 made it home by 5 p.m.
After Trevor had to leave Nikola, the passion was gone. The folks that were left in charge just lost touch with what we were doing, what we were trying to do.
The current management has diluted the shareholders to almost nothing, equivalent to about 2 cents a share now. They sold off the most valuable assets the company had, including the headquarters and the factory land. They spent over $1 billion in cash and are almost out of money now. They severed their relationships with our best suppliers. To say that there was poor management would be an understatement.
They were the ones chasing the dollar. It wasn't what it used to be, so it wasn't the place for me.
From my own understanding and my personal opinion, I was let go because of my relationship with Trevor, because I was loyal to him. And I saw a lot of that happening as I was leaving. More people that were loyal to him were let go.
They started to de-scope what we did. In fact, I was hired to do nothing for a full year because they just wanted to keep me on the books. I think it was to not have me say anything. And I ended up leaving because I didn't want to be kept quiet.
We poured everything into that company. We put our blood, sweat, and tears. I have no idea how many nights I slept at Nikola working on projects, only to have something like this come along and portrayed as a scam. It was really hard to deal with.
Like all my friends and family, it's like, aren't you ashamed that you worked for such a criminal? And I had to defend him and defend myself and say, no, I'm a very honest person. I have high integrity. I work for people with high integrity. And he's not anything that they say that he was.
If Trevor ended up going to prison, it would be a horrible injustice.
Are you hungry? Come on. Come on. Good dogs. Wait. Break. If the appeal doesn't go through and there is a possibility of my worst nightmare happening, I mean, we've had to have conversations to prepare, yet no matter how you prepare for something like that, you look at other cases that it's happened to or other situations, and maybe this is the best route. Nothing's guaranteed. You never know what way a judge is gonna rule. And so those are the moments that I've broken down into nothing. And it's been... It's heartbreaking. But I know that I'm not of value to
my family and everyday society and, you know, all the people that we take care of, the employees that we employ if I'm a mess. I've had to ask for help a lot, and I'm grateful for the people that have been there for me.
So we're doing 5 crowns instead? Okay. 7. Okay.
Usually I don't sit next to you because, you know.
Yeah.
I know.
We have to break.
We want to keep the peace and the calm.
We have a couple of competitive players here.
And I tend to
So
win.
that's what, 6, and then one more 7. Okay, 7. Okay, it's 7s this time, guys. So you have it can be a straight 7, anything that equals a 7, and 7s are wild.
Did I draw?
Nope. Why did you?
I have refused to look in my mind at the idea that that appeal will be unsuccessful. I don't even give it any place to think about it. I can't. It would be a disaster on many, many levels.
Holy wild.
That's what I'm asking for. So look at that.
Again, Joe.
That's why he was giggling at the beginning of the game.
Something was going on. It would be really hard for me to have joy knowing my brother was stuck in somewhere he couldn't have joy. It would be really difficult for me. My brother and I are close. It would eat me alive every day.
Where's the bucket salt? Oh, he's out. He's out.
It makes me sick to my stomach every day.
Chelsea's got 9s. That's BS.
Shoot, don't look
That's
at
a
my
lot of
cards.
9s.
Don't look at my
That's a lot of 9s.
Why'd you look over
Could you
there?
fold it? You put them upside. You put them right side
distracted
up.
with a glass of water.
I didn't cheat.
The few times that we've had to have conversations where we would prepare for the worst, I break down so deeply that I think Trevor feels like he doesn't want to bring it up again because he doesn't want to see me in the depths of, you know, crying on the floor and not wanting to face those realities.
I forgot that you actually took.
All right, my turn? Oh, I'd say I like the 7.
As soon as he discards it, it's his turn.
You know, as you prepare for your appeal, the only thing you're really thinking about is your family. You don't have a lot of time to dwell on like the negative possibilities. I think we have an incredible appeal, one of the best, I think, in the Southern District that's probably come through there in a very long time. So I think we have a very good chance of getting it overturned. You can let your mind go there negatively, but it doesn't do you any good because there's nothing you can do to change it. Some of the things I wish people could take away from this, especially entrepreneurs, is that most of the information they're going to get from investors and other people's is completely bogus. They have their own desires, they have their own agendas, and they will destroy you to take everything you've ever built. And I didn't know that going into this. It helps me understand where that famous saying is, the root of all evil comes from money. And it's true, I saw some of the best people I've ever met in my life become cowards over money. The day I left Nikola, the stock was at $30 a share. And is now down to about 10 cents a share. The existing management now has absolutely destroyed the company, pillaged it, taking multi-million-dollar salaries up to $8 million while they bankrupt the company. I think they should be in prison for it. They lied to the government, they destroyed evidence, they tried to destroy me, but then they just took millions of dollars while they did it. That to me is really unforgivable. To the entrepreneurs out there, when you're in a tough position, go with your gut, don't ever listen to anybody. If anyone ever tells you, oh, you're not good enough, you need to step aside, or we need more people in here to really support you, that's a bunch of horse crap. Those people never built a company like you did. You're enough, you're good enough for what you're doing, and you're good enough to continually grow your company. Don't listen to those people.
What was your reason for pardoning Trevor Milton?
Highly recommended by many people. He did a business deal like in Utah, and then they brought him into New York, where he had a rough road, and they say it was very unfair. And when I heard about it, I said, nope, not gonna happen. They destroyed 5 years of his life, and he did nothing wrong.
In the heat of the battle, we'll be the first ones in line. Won't retreat from the struggle, 'cause warriors don't run. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. This ground is covered with broken promises, and just when everything seems lost, together we live, together we die, side by side. Warriors don't run. In the heat of the battle, we'll be the first ones in line. Won't retreat from the struggle, 'cause warriors don't run. All the odds stacked against us, we're running out of time. Though we may be surrounded, warriors don't run. Side by side we take our stand. This ground is covered with our solemn promises, always true to our commands. Forever we live as legends, we die side by side. Warriors don't run. In the heat of the battle, we'll be the first ones in line. Won't retreat through the struggle, 'cause warriors don't run. All the odds stacked against us, we're running out of time. Though we may be surrounded, warriors don't run.
This isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning.